Oh, need my microphone. Hi. Sorry to keep everybody waiting. Um, Gosh, another week of learning done. I'd love to check in. How's everybody feeling? How's our first week of CSS gone? I know we've been having a little bit of some disgruntlement with CSS, but I hope it's gotten better as the days have gone by and as we learn together and realize that it's all just going to take a bit. But yeah, good to see folks hopping into the chat. This one was heavy, says Mel. Yeah, a lot of learning for today, so I'm going to try and be brief and direct. So please, folks, interrupt me with your questions. So let's get right to it. If you're tuning in for the first time, hi, I'm Carmen. Jess, Etta, and I are running this free bootcamp for web development in collaboration with Free Code Camp. By joining, you agree to abide by our code of conduct, badwebsite.club/code-of-conduct. If you see anything out of sorts, please let us know. You can find the schedule at badwebsite.club/bootcamps/spring-2026. Join us on Discord, discord.gg/KVU lowercase m VXA. And if you miss anything, don't worry. We're recorded on YouTube, youtube.com/@badwebsiteclub. I'll be updating the playlist on a regular basis, maybe weekly. Bear with me. And yeah, let's dive right into it. Learners saying, the more deep in CSS I go, the more I realize I am deeper in the rabbit hole. I love y'all's enthusiasm over CSS. And I think that yesterday I kind of started pushing back on this whole rabbit hole notion, because for me it's more important to get familiar and exposed to the concepts rather than understanding them fully and going on these deep rabbit holes. Don't get me wrong, it's super fun, it's super curious. CSS, like most of these things, was designed very quickly, and so there are oftentimes some things that were just like, but why? While saying and containing my CSS rabbit hole tendency by trying to configure my NeoVim by hand from scratch. It's good to have hobbies. Let's dive right into it, shall we? Got a lot to cover today. Let's look at the homework we had. We'll be looking at background images, background gradients, accessibility considerations for backgrounds, and different ways you can add borders around images. I want to read some of the chat before we get started because I'm seeing some questions and thoughts come in. Is a real point that we know the concepts exist and we just deep dive into it only when we need it? Let me put it this way. If you can use it, if you can, for example, put up a background image and you kind of understand, for example, how to change out the image or the sizing, but not really understand the whys and the nitty gritty, then yes, the deep dives are important, but they can be overwhelming when you're going through, a 10-week boot camp. Mel says, I found the background linear gradient and radial gradient is hard to think through. I have trouble when something can take different inputs values, all of a different type. Hard to know what affects what. And that's a very solid point. And this kind of goes into what I was just saying. I think while it is super important and interesting to indulge curiosities, like, for example, what order can stuff be put in, really not so much if it works, or if it works, great, leave it there, but rather learn how to wield it well enough so that you're dangerous with it. So let's dive right in. And I want to start by asking a question to the chat, because yes, for any element, we can have background images. For example, for this website here, we're having a body with a background image of a cat relaxing, which by default looks like this, which is great. So I have a first question here, and this is a question for the chat. Why do this instead of using an image tag? In the meantime, hang on. Learner's asking, what is the difference between having a background image in HTML versus in CSS? Let me clarify something. This is HTML, but notice that this is a style tag. So this is CSS inside HTML. This is just HTML. So the difference is none really. Image tag doesn't repeat. Okay, but what if we have an element with no repeating background image? Jane saying, so that it knows to stay behind everything on the page. That's a very valid point. To use auto tiling and have immediate control over scroll behavior from the top of my head. Very valid. Love it. And there's no wrong answers here. So we're seeing that by default background images will tile. That means that they repeat. It is possible to set different it is possible to have different sizes of the background or different control over the background using the images like background size. So for example, background size we're setting here to be contain. Let's have a look. Now it's staying at 100 pixels. But what does that mean? That is to scale it as large as possible without cropping or stretching. So what if I remove this minimum height? Let's give it a try. And of course, refresh. So if we contain, it's just going to tile a whole bunch. But with the minimum height, we can tell the background to be at least 100 pixels tall. So if I set it to 1000, it's going to be very big. Waddle saying the initial idea is to not use a random photo, but a tiling texture designed to be a background, obviously. And yeah, most of your background images are going to be like for something big like the body is going to be something that can be easily tiled. Image tag would just put it in line, but a background image, you can put elements in the foreground of that image. Great. Background lets you add multiple images. Very cool. I was somewhat confused by contain versus cover in this section. Christina, could I ask you to say, are you still confused? And if not, can you tell me what the difference is? Good afternoon. Good to see you. So if we change the background size to use the cover value, then the background image will scale to cover the entire body element while maintaining its cover rate aspect ratio. Let's remove the image height, the minimum height, and there we can see cover will cover as much as it can with the image. So it's just going to stretch out. Whereas contain is going to be teeny, cover is going to stretch out. But if I set the min height once again, it's 100 pixels. That's because it's a minimum height. But what if I set a maximum height? Do I need to refresh again? Sorry, folks. It's a bit annoying to have to do this every time. Cover, cover, cover. Max height. Actually, I want to try something here. What if I just set the height to be 100 pixels? Stays large. I'm going to be honest, folks. Oh, because it's the height of the background. Of course, it's still cover will still stretch it. Okay, let's see what other values we have here. So we've got contain, which you remember fairly. Let me remove this height. Cool. So contain rather small. Cover stretch out. What else we've got? Is that it? Okay, then cover and contain. And Waddle, if anybody wants, I can give a little how-to on Discord on creating tiling images in most image editors. I want to know. You should definitely do that on Discord. Thank you. So by default, we're seeing that these are repeating, but we can also tell CSS not to repeat the image. Oh, Christina, I'm glad it's helping. So by setting background repeat to no repeat, we're seeing that the cat just appears once. Let's see what other values we have. Thank you, Eduardo. There's other values such as repeat, which is the default behavior here, but we also have repeat X, which repeats along the X axis, that is horizontally. Repeat Y will do so vertically. What else we got? Rounding up with space. Inherit. And yeah, that's repeating. Oh, I remember learning about cover, stretch, whatever, back when I changed my desktop background on Windows back when I was a kid. I used to do that too. It was fun. Cool. So yeah, we saw repeat X and repeat Y. I'm just going to blaze through this. Background position is quite interesting. Lets us set where exactly Mel, I like your question. I'm just going to bookmark it for now. Yes, so you can also use a background position to set where in the background the image should live. So for example, by setting it here to center and top. I see your question, Pranab Sarma 18, and I will take a look at it. Right. So let's look at how CSS is interpreting this. We set our background position to be center space top, which then tells the browser automatically, hey, background position X should be the center, background position Y should be the top. So if I want it to be directly in the middle, I should write center, center. Now, why is it not in the center? That's because our min height is 100 pixels, pardon me. If I set the min height, because this is contained, it's going to be at the top. What helps us understand what's going on here is by inspecting the body itself, which you will see is quite small. So one way to fix that is to make the height, I think it's, no. Is it V? How was it again? Height. Ugh. Please work with me, CSS. 100%. Yes. Cool. So now I've set the height to be 100%. Things get a little more interesting now. So viewport units. Yes, that's what I'm thinking of. Thank you. But where did my inspect? I don't want to look at the HTML. I want to look at my body, which is where the background is set. Is that correct? Bear with me, folks. Yes. Cool. All right. Let's set the min. Instead of min height here, I want this to be height 100 pixels. So not minimum height, and max height to be 100 pixels too, please. Ugh, why are we using body for this? That's always confusing. Well, fine. Let's open up HTML editor so we can play around with this. Okay. I'm just going to have, bear with me, folks, a div here. Eduardo's asking, when I say center, where does it measure from? We'll get to that in a minute. It's kind of small. I'm going to make it larger. Okay. Got some HTML. There's just a div here. Now, I'm going to borrow this real quick. Thank you. Thank you. I prefer to use this for explaining these. So instead of the body having a background, we're going to make the div have the background. Now let's start from here. So body is going to have a height of 100%. Now let's take a look. So our div, our body is not stretched to 100%, and that's because I need to make both the HTML and the body 100%. Yes, is that right? Hang on, folks. Okay, body's 100%. Fabulous. Cool, so the body is set to be 100% tall. We have a div here with a centered image, centered along the X position. Now you can see this is about 300 pixels wide. This answers your question, Eduardo. This is about 300 pixels wide. So it's the center of it is the center of both the div and the image. Okay? Now, if I wanted okay, I'm seeing folks are frustrated with MDN, which is very sad to me because I love MDN. And I think it's because we are getting lost in rabbit holes. But let's focus on this, and then I'll spend a little bit of time on MDN. Right. So let me remove this minimum height. Now, notice what happens. We cannot see the div anymore because we're not setting a height for the div. But if I look, gosh, sorry, folks, this is a bit hard to see. Body, 100%, div, nothing. Okay? But if I set my div to have a height of 200 pixels, the cat is going to appear. Heck, let's make it 500 pixels. Let's make it 1,000, not too much. 1,000 pixels. Great. Now let's take a look at our div once again. Now I can finally illustrate this. The background position is center top. Let me try center center. Yes! Now the background is positioned along the center of the y-axis of the div. Let's move on. Whew, it is warm today. In order to position the background so that it stays anchored when scrolling, we use the background attachment CSS attribute. Let me bring that up. Now notice what happens. The background position is still center center. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? Background color pink. Cool. So you can see it's centered along this position of the div in the viewport. However, if I scroll, I can see here I can scroll down because our div has a height of 1,000 pixels. But look at this. I'm scrolling down and the image is not moving. This is because background attachment is fixed. By default, let's try out scroll. Now it's in the center of the div itself. It moves as I scroll. This is the important distinction. So fixed stays. And this is what a lot of people do to get like cool scrolling effects. I think some people do like, what's the term? Parallax scrolling with that? I could be wrong. But let's move on. Where is my background? Yeah, so that's the background. What is it called again? Anchor? Attachment. Now, is there a parallax setting? I don't know. Now we've been seeing, background size, background repeat, background position. Oopsie. You can use the background shorthand to write all of these. Center, top, fixed, and the image. Let me take all of this because I want to play around with it, just to showcase a couple of things. Now, that would be all of these. Cool. Center, top, fixed. Same thing as before. Can I switch out URL for red? Haha! So it can take not just an image, but also a color. Fun fact. Would Flexbox make it scroll horizontally? Most likely. Or, I mean, that's a really good question. Let's set the width to be 2000 pixels. Now, I can scroll horizontally. You're going to see the image stays put. If I set the background attachment to be scroll again, it's gone. But if I scroll far enough, there it is. Hello, kitty cat. So that's how you would make it scroll horizontally, if I understood the question correctly. Really? Is there parallax? Well, something happened. Okie dokie. I guess so. Let's get right to the questions then. Which background size value would you use to ensure the entire background image is visible without any cropping, even if it doesn't cover the whole element? We've got cover, contain, auto, and 100%. Contain, thank you very much. If you want a background image to repeat horizontally but not vertically, which background repeat value should you use? So we've got repeat, no repeat, repeat X, and repeat Y. Repeat X, thank you very much. Which background attachment value would you use to make a background image stay in place as the user scrolls a page? We've got scroll, fixed, local, and static. Thank you. Gosh, y'all are on top of this. Check our answers. Everything's correct. We pat ourselves on the back. Pat, pat. There seems to be no parallax property mentioned on MDN. Thank you very much, Eduardo. All right, let's do gradients. Bring back some of that 2000s mood. Is it set to fixed by default? No, it is not. Check it out. I got too much stuff here. Oh, yeah. So by default, not fixed. So, yes, let's look at gradients. So what gradients are is a way to have a background that transitions from one color to another. Now, this is, I believe, the first time we're seeing this in CSS. This is done with a function. You will see lots of functions or methods depending on which programming language you end up working more in. And what these are pre-written pieces of code that we can just invoke or call up to, for example, in this case, create a series of colors. We don't care we don't care how the function works. All we care about is calling it. So we are calling the linear gradient function, which takes a couple of arguments. These arguments are a direction, the color at stop 1, the color at stop 2, and so on and so forth. Most of the time, you're going to be making gradients with 2 colors. So color 1, color 2. And what that's going to do is create a background that transitions from one color to the other. And this is a linear gradient in that it moves along a line. Let's try out a gradient. And I'm going to do it back here because I'm enjoying being in here. So let me make our div smaller. Let's make it, I don't know, 100 by 200. Cool. So let me make this so can I? Oh no, I can't change the width here. Okay. Our background is a linear gradient that goes to the right from red to yellow. So starts at red, transitions over to orange, a mixture of red and yellow, and then ends at yellow. So let's look at this first. To right. Let's switch it to from right. Oh, maybe I don't know what it's called. Maybe that's what the dev tools are for. I was so excited. To right. I mean, whatever. You can make it to left. Now it starts from the right and moves over to the left. Am I understanding this correctly? Linear gradient 90 degrees, red 40%, blue 60% would be a 0 to 40% solid red, 40 to 60. Let's try it out. But let me get there first. And yes, for fine control, we need the hex codes. Have we done hex codes? I don't think so. We'll get there. And yes, we can do RGB as well. Cool. To top. Starts at the bottom, goes to the top. So that's this. So this is the direction, remember, goes from red to yellow. Let's go back to our backgrounds. We can also have radial gradients. So this is a little weirder, but this creates a gradient that goes radially, which means in a circle. So same thing, it's a function which takes 3 or more arguments. First is the shape, size, at position. So color 1, color 2, etc. So the shape can be circle or ellipse. The size, what the gradient's ending shape would be. Closest side, closest corner, farthest side or farthest corner. Position is going to be where the center of the gradient would be. This is usually done with one of these keywords or with precise values. And the stops are the colors that we already know and love so much. So let's make one. I'm going to copy paste this and let's have a look at what's going on. So circle. Let's change this to, it wasn't ellipsis. What was it? I already forgot. Oh, it is ellipse. Gosh, cool. So circle is a circle. Ellipse stretches to this size. If I make this 300 pixels wide, it's going to stretch out. If I keep it at circle, it's going to stay in the center. That's the difference between circle and ellipse. Waddle saying, I miff that direction is space separated, but farthest corner needs a dash. and there's no... Remember that with programming, a lot of decisions were made in the 70s by people who were coming up with the stuff as it went, or 60s even. Not all of it is going to have like a perfect rhyme or reason for it, and I'm sorry. So, cool. Closest side. What is it? Farthest side stretches out. Closest side stays inside. At top left. Did I do it wrong? Didn't I do that right? Hang on. Yeah. Rude. Why can't I do top left? Top left. Why? Closest side. I'm going to be honest. Position needs to come earlier. But really? Closest side. Put top left and farthest side. Okay. Farthest. Oh, that makes sense. Yes, it did. It went off the screen. Thank you, loves. See, guessing is good. And you can see, like, look at me just like not knowing what I'm doing. Like, top left, farthest. It's a good guess. Center. Okay. If it has any color, it understands, but you can't see it. Yeah, fair. Mel's asking, what happens if you give green 50%? Let's find out. And I want to keep it in the center. Ah! There. Okay. So, took the transition away. What happens if I remove red? It's a very stark transition. So what if I make this 25 and 25? Again, no transition. I bet we're going to get to those percentage points soon. So, starts with red at the center, transitions to yellow at 50% of the radius. So after 50% red, it then goes, cool, now I'm going to start doing yellow, and then it ends with green. That's it. We're not going to get any more explanation of how these percents work. Fine. Then I'm going to play with it. Let's go back to the linear gradients. I'm going to be honest. These ones I feel help me a little bit more. So let's do that again, but here. We'll do this to the right. Cool. So yellow will occupy 50%, and then it'll start transitioning to red. If I make it red 50%, it's the opposite. Red is going to occupy 50% of the gradient and then switch to yellow, and then start transitioning to yellow. If I want it to be much smaller, yeah, so now red occupies 10% and then starts transitioning to yellow. So red is 10%, starts transitioning to yellow. What if I do it the opposite way? What if I do yellow 90%? So 90. Oh, red is at 90%, only yellow, and then starts transitioning to red. If two colors next to each other have the same percentage, it takes away the transition. If three colors, it needs two percentages, something like yellow 25, 25, 50 blue, 50 no transition. Oh, that's what you were asking. Okay. Okay, let me see. Let's try. So, yellow, if I could spell, yellow, 25, red, 25, oh, 25, 50, blue, 50. Yes. So yellow, 25%. So first 25%, all yellow. From 25% to 50% of the way, just red. And blue is the rest of the 50%. So yes, there's no transition. If I remove that 50% from the red, now it transitions towards blue until the 50% mark, after which it's all blue. My advice, play around with it. Again, it's not going to be something that you can, I mean, I don't know about the rest of y'all. Maybe some of y'all are really good at like, what's that called? Like, you picture an apple in your head and how detailed is the apple? What is that concept called? You know, like some people don't see an apple. It's like brain visualization. Somebody knows what I'm talking about. There's a cool word for it, and I don't know what it is. Aphantasia, thank you. Yes, aphantasia, that's what I'm talking about. Look into that. It's like if you have good that, maybe you can calculate your gradients more easily. I got more confused when I played with it. I gave up understanding it after 2 hours. But okay. Understanding or knowing how to use it. That's the distinction that I really want to drive home here. It's super important to know what one considers understanding here. And I know it's annoying because it kind of sounds like I'm suggesting that, you know, that you just accept it because that's the way it is. And that's really not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is more like knowing which rabbit holes to pick. Can you use the gradients? Fantastic. But I like what Baking and NC is saying here. Work at it, then let your diffuse brain stew on it, then come back to it. You know what I always say is my best debugging tool? Going for a walk. Whenever I'm stuck in a problem, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go make cookies. Using functions means learning someone else's way of doing something. I'm going to be honest with you, and I know that this is annoying, but I really, really want to stress this. Most of the code we write, most of the computing notions, making cookies is the same as going for a walk. No, it's just examples of things I can do. Using most programming languages, most frameworks are written by someone else. And sometimes we're just going to need to accept that there were decisions taken that we're not going to be able to fully understand. Understanding as in knowing what it does with the percentages. Yeah, that's valid. But I'm going to be honest with you. Up until I came here today to teach for you and, you know, was writing notes and all of that, I had forgotten how the percentages worked. I had forgotten what it does. I had forgotten what it does with percentages. That doesn't mean I can't wield it. Sometimes I have to just tweak it a little bit and through trial and error try and understand what's going on. I don't know how my respiratory system works, but I know how to breathe. Even if you work at the lowest possible levels, then the electronics-related decisions will force you in some directions. Yeah, and then we need to deal with like the decisions taken behind how physics works. I can write my own badly documented function, lol. I better understand why the framework library did it that way. I'm sorry, but sometimes you're just not going to know. That doesn't mean, like, I'm not trying to encourage you to be like, oh, I don't care. It's not that you don't care. It's that sometimes you just need to pick those battles. And I know it's frustrating. My brain very much wants to know the whys. But sorry, I need to continue for us. So what does the circle keyword specify in a radial gradient function? We've got the gradient will have a square shape. The gradient will extend in a diagonal direction. The gradient will have a circular shape, and the gradient will be applied to the text. Circular shape, thank you very much. What does the farthest corner keyword do in the size parameter of the radial gradient function? Makes the gradient extend to the nearest corner of the element. It makes the gradient cover the entire element's width. It makes the gradient extend to the farthest corner of the element. It makes the gradient only appear within the element's padding. I agree with Samity, because I was also thinking of like a square element, because most elements are rectangle shape. So extend to the farthest corner, farthest. Thank you. Is the radial gradient circle at center red, yellow, 50% green function? Where is the gradient's center located? At the top right corner of the element, at the bottom left corner of the element, at the center of the element, at the outer edge of the element. I like what Eduardo's saying. Somebody decided in Bash if statements should end with fi. Yeah. And I think it's in Elixir where they end in endif. I could be wrong. Center. Yes, thank you very much. Check our answers. We did it. Pat, pat. Let's move on to accessibility. And I'm so excited about this, because in this one, we're going to be talking about oh gosh, color contrast. So I really wish okay, you know what? I'm going to be annoying. Bear with me. So put this in here. Take this, not do an inline accessibility. Oh, yeah. So here we go. The element. Right. Fabulous. All right, take a look. So this text says this is an example of poor contrast, right? This has to do with the fact that the background color is too close to the foreground color, that is the text color, right? It's difficult to read. But this is not just for folks who have visibility, who have visibility issues. For example, can't believe I'm doing this. The further back I step, the harder that is to read. So if I'm reading a sign or a screen from far away, the color contrast does make it really important. I know this is something I keep saying, but accessibility affects all of us. What was it called again? The curb cut rule. Yeah, the curb cut effect, meaning that accessibility benefits us all. Now, here's a fun fact. On Chrome or on Google Chrome or Chromium browsers, if you click on your DevTools here and then hover over the piece of text, and I'm sorry, I know it's difficult to see, but you see where it says accessibility, you see the contrast has a ratio of 1.37, and there's a little warning next to it. I'm so sorry, friends, I can't make it bigger. This is how we can check our color contrast in real time. So how do we improve that? let's make the color something darker. Let's go with gray. It's 2.3, we're still getting a warning. It looks nice, but again, if I step away, it gets harder to see. So there are ways to fix this. Let's make the background black. Try it again. Now the color contrast is 14.02 and there's a tick box. This means that the color contrast of this element is good. But it's not just that, is it? There are other kind of visibility issues. For example, so let's see what it thinks of this. This is a 1. So Mel's saying make the text bigger and bolder if you have low contrast. Sure. But what if you have users who like to have small fonts? For example, when I love e-readers. I have this one that's like the size of a credit card, and I really like it. And I like to make the text small on it. And, for reading ebooks. I want the text to be smaller because that's how I want to use it. You still need to keep the color contrast in mind. So this is difficult to read. So not a good example. Is it lime? Better. So let's take a look at this. This has a color contrast of 2.91. Still not great. Eluado, you called me out. That is the e-reader I have, and I love it. But I don't want to get us distracted. So it's a 2.91, which is good. Do people with color blindness use tools since there are lots of types? Okay. So let's talk about color blindness. I actually have an extension on my browser. Can you all see it? Yes. Color blindly. I can't make the font bigger. I'm so sorry. But let's just look at some of these. Blue cone monochromy, monochromacy. I don't know how to pronounce this. Monochromacy, green weak, green blind, red weak, red blind, blue weak, blue blind. Now, what I love about this extension is that it allows you to test a website and see it as a person with this specific type of color blindness would see it on their device. No, as they would see it. So let's try it out. This is blue cone monochromacy. This is monochromacy. Check it out. The text is much harder to read with monochromacy. Green weak, green blind, red weak, a little bit better. Red blind, don't tell anyone. Blue weak, blue blind. This is a great type of tool, and there's tons of these types of extensions for your browser to test what the color contrast would look like if you have a specific type of color blindness. And hey, let's take it anywhere. Let's go to the Bad Website Club website. Check it out. Let's go with Protanopia. Close to home. This is what our website looks like to someone with Protanopia or Tritanopia. Deuteranopia. I think it's very, very cool to be able to see what it's like. Is there anything else we could do to help with color blindness? So I know some sites will use icons for meanings. I think the best is to focus on is of course do extensive testing and also focus on color contrast. When I'm groggy, I can't tell the difference between some colors, for example. So yeah, that's the accessibility part of color. And I love this section. So why is it important to maintain sufficient contrast between text and background? To make the image look more colorful, to make the text more readable for all users, to reduce loading times on a web page, and to highlight text in different ways. Ooh, Mel's got a question that I like. I'm just gonna... More readable. Correct. Thank you. Which of the following should be avoided when placing text over a background? Applying a high contrast background, using a busy or complex background without any overlay, using white text on a black background, using a solid background color behind text. Using a busy or complex background without any overlay, correct. What is the issue with using color as the only indicator of information, such as showing an error message in red? I have thoughts about this. It makes the website look less colorful. It doesn't affect users with visual impairments. It can be problematic for users with color blindness. It requires more CSS code. And people are saying number 3. I have thoughts. It's also a cultural issue. In some cultures, green is not a good color. And red is a positive color. Fun fact. But thank you, folks. Let's check our answers. Uh-oh, correct. What did we do wrong here? Correct? Wait, what? Did I forget? No, it's correct. Oh, I wasn't signed in. My bad. Does it help to have to give shadows and outlines to parts? Yes. So, where's that cat? Let's bring back the cat. Hang on. Yes. Let's bring back the cat. It's going to take a second. There we go. Let's bring the cat back. Sure, let's make it 100 by 200. And inside the cat div, we're going to have the P element with "this is hard to read." And let's make it repeat. Cool. Now you can't tell, but there's some text in here that says "this is hard to read." One way to mitigate this is with CSS. You can have text over images, but of course, you need to make it be able to you need to be able to read it. So this is easy or to read. If I make the background color white and the foreground color black, then it's even easier to read. Now, oh, right, sorry. Yeah, so you can do outlines, for example, or shadows. They can help as well. I want to highlight something else on MDN. How are we doing time-wise? I need to hit, what is the opposite of the brakes? Hit the metal pedal. What about a partially transparent background? Yeah, that totally works too. You can use something called an alpha channel on the color. Prefers, what is it? Contrast? What is that called? Prefers contrast used to detect higher or lower contrast. Yes. Yes. Okay, check this out. This is a little bit further ahead, but I would like to showcase to you later in this boot camp. No, Mel, that's such a good question. I'm going to come back to it. Bear with me. Actually, No, that is something that's relevant here. So can't websites take colors from your OS settings? So if there's a cultural issue, it's less likely for your website will be offensive. Yeah, actually, kind of. And this is what I wanted to show. So in CSS, there is something called a media query. Okay. I promise we're going to come back to this. So if you're like, oh man, I have no idea what you're talking about, don't worry. I'm going to come back to it. I promise. But look, so you can have your CSS write specific CSS for the type of media that the user is using to view your website. So what does that mean? Prefers color theme dark, prefers color theme light, then you can write custom CSS for a light and a dark mode. Or if a user prefers more text contrast, then you write text with more higher color contrast. When we get to animation, there's prefers reduced motion, so that if people have motion sickness issues, you can disable the animations with this media query. This is relatively recent, and when I say relatively recent, I mean within the last 10 years. This is sublime. I love it. And it's not just because I see sublime in the chat. Okay. Anyway, so is there also one for flashing lights? I don't know. Take a look on MDN. I'm sorry, I don't know off the top of my head. I need to finish here. So sorry, folks. So last part for today is border. Oh, I love borders. Oh, borders are my favorite thing in the world. Okay, hang on. Let me take this and play around with it. I think I'm going to start doing this more. I like this HTML editor. So there's our image with a cat. And yes. Cool. So we can use a border shorthand to declare a border around a specific element. It's not just images. This works for any element. Some of the parameters it takes, not parameters is not the right word. Some of the properties you can set are, for example, the width of the border, like 20 pixels thick. Doesn't have to be solid. I think one of them is dotted. Yes! I can't believe I remember that. And the color. Of course, you can also very specifically not just set the border for the entire border, but check this out. If I right-click here, border is actually a shorthand for several CSS declarations. Border top width, border right width, border bottom width, border left width, border top style, blah, 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 top right, bottom left, top right, bottom left, and so on and so forth. Which means, yes, you can have different borders. So border top, for example, I will set to be 10 pixels, solid, and green. Right? Or 100. So even though I set this border because I declared this border later on, it overrides the cascade. So yeah, that's the very short version of how we work with borders. And yeah, it's folks, oh my gosh, I love to see folks speaking other languages. That's so cool. Yeah, you can set different borders, like I said. Another way to create a border effect is by using the outline property. While similar to border, outline doesn't affect the element's dimensions or layout. Oh, I'm excited. Let me show you all what this means. Let me bring this back. Let's look at our, what's it called? Box model. So inspect. Cool. So here's our box model. The element itself is 280 by 280. There's no padding. However, there is a border. So the border is not part of the element itself. However, if I add an outline and I right click on it again, and let's make it 30 pixels just for fun. Right click, inspect. Fabulous. So check it out. 280 is the width and height. The border is 20 by 20. But you can see that the outline is not part of the box model. Yes. So that's border radiuses. No, it's radii, isn't it? Let's play with border radii. So let's make this solid again. And let's make it small. Let's make the border smaller. And I'll make the border radius. So you can't quite see it, but you can see that the corners are kind of rounded now. Let me make the border radius bigger and you'll see. Haha. And it's also cutting off the image. This is intentional. If you want to make a perfect circle, by the way, 50% always does the trick. Then you've got a perfect circle. Oh, that's it. Oh, I love radiuses. They're so much fun. Okay. So which CSS property allows you to create a border that doesn't affect the element's dimensions? So there's border, outline, box shadow, or border image. That doesn't affect the element's dimension. Border, outline, box shadow, or border image. People are saying outline. Very good. Ooh, how would you create a 3 pixel wide dashed red border only on the left side of an image? Oh, gosh. Oh, that's a good question, learner, and I'm going to bookmark it for a second. So we've got 3 pixels dashed red left, border left 3 pixels dashed red, left border 3 pixels dashed red, or border left 3 pixels dashed red. People are saying border left. Thank you very much. Sorry, it was a bit hard with the size of the screen. And which CSS property would you use to round the corners of a border? Border style, border radius, border spacing, or border bottom? So we've got border style, border radius, border spacing, and border bottom. People are saying number 2. Thank you very much. Let's check our answers. And good. Pat, pat. Back to questions. Isn't 100 a perfect circle? How's it different with 50? Yeah. So this is a bit weird. But remember, the border radius is the radius. Remember, a radius is like, what is the radius again? Isn't the radius like halfway from the center, the distance from the center to the edge of a circle? Right? If I make it 25, you'll see the radius from the edge is like this thing. So yeah, it's only this much. I know it's kind of weird to explain. So remember, the border radius is from here. Sorry, the radius of a circle is from here to here. So this is 25% radius. And if I do, for example, 5%, then it's this much. If I go to 30%, it's more. And 50% gets me half. Whoops, I can't type. 50% gets me halfway down. So it's 50%, right? If I do 100, if I do anything other than over 50, it's going to look exactly the same. 1,000%, 10,000%. So that's why. Math things. Okay, more questions. Yes, I wanted to address this. I was going through background documentation on MDN and it was really scary for me. Can you please tell how we should read documentation? This is something that I want to show you my approach. And I don't know if you've been seeing me do it. Let me just look up background. CSS property. Keep the chat here. Masses and mathing. So I don't read this. I'm like, a demo, cool. And I started looking at, okay, I can set the background to be green. I look at the content box. No repeat URL. And I can, like, what MDN lets me do is like mess around with these. If I need a specific property, I can find them here. Look at examples of syntax so that I can grab exactly what I need. I'm not here to see what every possible background there is. I come here thinking to myself like, oh, I want to have, I don't know, a background at the top left. So I'm like, position, cool. Click on it. Look at that. This is what I can read. And you see, I'm not skimming per se. I'm just kind of like, oh yeah, center. That's what I need. Dang, there it is. Right? I'll be honest. Let me, like, all of this stuff, I'm like, it is scary or overwhelming, but I'm laser focusing on what I need, which is a position. Background repeat. Who was asking about that? Mel. Yeah. The default is repeat. Let's find out what the other possible values are. So it would seem. To value syntax. There we go. Horizontal and vertical. And you see, I just skipped all of this. Like, you're really training yourself. What you're training yourself to do with documentation is seeing what you need. This isn't a novel I'm here to read. This is a reference. Documentation is not, it's not prose to read. It is a reference that you come to and get exactly what you need. Description. Oh, let me be very clear. Super grateful that this exists. And I am not dismissing the amount of work that goes into this. If I need to understand if I'm interested, or if I need to understand the nitty-gritties, then yes, I'll come and read the description. But a lot of the time I'm just like, hang on a second. What was that about order? Oh yeah, look at that. There's stuff about order. Cool. Yeah, we were talking about order the other day. None of this I'm super interested in. Oh, I can see, like, oh, I just want to know about position. Oh yeah, there's position. Come here. I know it's frustrating, but I hope it's helpful to see, like, how I approach it. What other questions we got? Does it help to give outlines, shadows, and part? No, we already did that. Isn't 100%. I think that's all of the questions. Let's see what else we got here. Yeah. I think, let me just, what we needed to do. We've got our blog post card lab. There's a review and a quiz to do as well. As always, if you're stuck, please use the Discord to answer and ask questions. Let's look at what we'll be doing next Monday. We're going to be doing interface design fundamentals. Look at all that reading, folks. Listen, this is a lot. We're taking a lot on at once. please pace yourselves and don't expect yourselves to understand everything at once. It can be a lot. Everybody reacts differently to new things that they've learned. And I think for me, what helps me sort of like ground myself in my learning, because I'm still learning. I've been at this for a long time, but I'm still learning. A bunch of stuff got added to CSS a couple of years ago, and I'm still learning that, is to really laser focus what I need to do and what I want to do with it. Weekends are for tinkering. Love it. I'm actually tinkering a little bit myself this weekend, so I'm quite excited. And well, I think that's everything for today. We're a little bit over time. Sorry about that. It was super fun. Thank you all for being here today. As always, if you're catching up, don't forget that everything is on YouTube. I'll update the YouTube playlist, youtube.com/@badwebsiteclub. And yeah, rest well, everybody. Well done. Another week done. I'll see you next week. Bye for now.